take. And we let them.
Who?
Who knows?
I don't understand what's happening.
I'm going to say this is not a porn film. We are talking lovely, dark and deep. Oh yes, that's the real title of this movie, written and directed by Theresa Sutherland and stars Georgina Campbell, who you may know from Barbarian. Now, what is this movie all about, you might be asking? Well, let me just tell you, this is one of those somewhat kind of art house movies. To be honest with you, if you've watched this channel for any number of years or whatever, you'll know that I don't love surreal movies, to be honest. So I'm going into this movie review telling you right now that I am not the biggest fan of art house, surrealism, all of that type of thing. And I personally feel there are these people, some people out there at the very least, who can say they like this sort of stuff, but they just say it because they don't understand it and don't want to look like an idiot. But I know that there are other fans out there as well. So if you like A24 movies, listen up, because that's going to start off film. However, I do have some legitimate good things to say about it. But before we get into that, what's the plot? So this focuses on this new park ranger who has had some tragedy in her life that is kind of explored through the movie, and she's kind of got this job as a kind of means to deal with her tragedy that also involves someone going missing in a kind of national park. So she's sent to this kind of remote area and to ultimately live on kind of her own, work as a park ranger on her own. But when she's there, she starts to experience odd phenomena. There seems to be almost like how to describe it, maybe like a parallel dimension, weird things going on, entities in the kind of the forest that are messing with her mind. Now, is she going mad? Is it just kind of the isolation that's getting to her, or are there kind of supernatural forces at work? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? Now, despite this being somewhat of a surreal movie, there is actually a kind of a plot to it, to be honest. At least I think it has that going for it. The narrative is a little muddled, we'll talk about it, but there is one. What I will say in a legitimate kind of plus column here, the movie is shot fantastically. I mean, it's actually filmed in Portugal, I believe, and really benefits from this kind of natural environment that looks both beautiful and kind of like massive and kind of intimidating at the kind of the same time. So I think it really does capture that feel of being like alone in the woods, and kind of you are just out in the middle of nature, and kind of all your modern technology has kind of like melted away, and you're just left there isolated. And that's then the feeling of kind of like being on your own and how that affects one's mind. And I do feel the movie does get that across. So this is one of these films where I'd say it somewhat sacrifices a traditional narrative for a kind of getting you to emote certain things, getting you to understand the psychology of our protagonist and kind of what is going on. So in that respect, I'll give this movie some props, because I do feel that it does kind of do that at the very least. Our lead character is a little underdeveloped, if I'm honest. I mean, we get some flashbacks kind of filling in some blanks, but and nonetheless, I still feel she was portrayed very well. You know, a kind of a believable kind of performance. This movie has a kind of, despite its surreal elements, it does have a sort of groundedness, and I think this is primarily coming from our lead actress here, giving you a somewhat of a solid performance. There's not loads of kind of dialogue, because she's on her own a lot of the time, but nonetheless, I think you still have a somewhat sort of grounded lead character at the kind of the very least. I think this movie has some technical elements, like I said, that this cinematography I think is fantastic. A good use of kind of like Foley effects and sound effects and things like this to kind of give you this there is something out there kind of feel to it. And the movie does have little glimpses of what I would say is more traditional horror in there as well. A couple of kind of gore shots. There's a couple of like more overt kind of creepy moments kind of peppered through the film. And I think those work well because, you know, it's juxtaposed against more of a weird, surreal element. And the movie does, as I say, does have a kind of explanation about what's kind of going on. It isn't one of these movies, I feel, that leaves you high and dry. Now, whether that explanation, I think, is satisfying is a different question, but at least it has one, I suppose. Which then leads me to maybe what doesn't work. I don't know if the explanation is delivered particularly well, because it's essentially an exposition dump. You'll get like, this is what's happening in literally an exposition dump. And I don't know if it seems just a little bit like, there you go, bomb. That's the explanation, and we're just going to leave it there. So I don't know if it's particularly satisfying. Let me just put it like that. There is still a lot left to one's own interpretation about what is going on. I guess it has that, as I say, it does have that. I suspect it may have been added in reshoots, if I'm honest, though, because it's in a, well, you'll see, the location where this happens is in a different location to everything else, and I suspect this is reshoots, to be honest, to make it a little bit more palatable. That's just my theory, however, but I suspect I'm right about that. Okay, the main issue for here is, obviously, do you like art house films? Do you like surreal films? If the answer is yes, then you'll marvel at the kind of the cinematic portrayal of isolation and the effect on one's mind. There you go. However, this is a very slow film, and I think it's not clear. The narrative is very mixed about what is going on. There's a lot of flashbacks in this movie, so if you don't like flashbacks, that's going to annoy you. And I think the flashbacks are done in a way where they themselves are a little bit confusing. Again, it's all meant to do this, oh no, you know, it's like anxiety-inducing kind of isolation, blah, blah, blah. It's great, but like, it's kind of like this movie gave me anxiety watching it, because I'm thinking, what am I watching? What am I watching? So the film is just kind of throwing out lots of kind of surreal situations, weird things, you know. Is she kind of on a different plane of existence? What is going on? Who is doing this? What is responsible? What are the actual kind of powers at work here? Don't expect to kind of know everything. You'll just get a vague explanation. But it's just kind of like, the narrative is very muddled. There is a narrative. It's just not particularly well realised. If you want more of a, you know, a straight narrative, or one that is going to be completely satisfying, you know, and some of the elements that are introduced, I feel were just done to kind of like, let's be weird. Let's kind of have some surreal things going on. And it's just like, but what is the purpose of it, you know? So as I said, I think on a technical level, I think this movie is solidly put together. It's slow paced. It's kind of not particularly a movie with lots of necessarily twists, but the narrative is very hard to follow in some ways, and a little confused. And I don't think the message that it is trying to get across really is particularly that well portrayed. And as I said, I think the ending is clumsily handled. I'll give this movie a 5 out of 10. I can see what they were trying to do, and I do think the movie does portray the sense of isolation pretty well. The actress, I think, is fine. I think the overall narrative is muddled and confused, though. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do let me know. And this one's a 5 out of 10. Bye for now.